Hi, thanks for joining me today. It's Geraldine from the Paper Puffin Studio, and today I'm going to show you how to make these fun camera slider cards. I'll just show you how this one works. You pull on the ribbon and out comes the sentiment. I hope you like the video. If you do, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Now let's get started. Let's begin by reviewing all of the pieces that you're going to need to assemble this card. You're going to need a piece of your base color cardstock measuring 5 3/4 inches by 4 1/2 inches, a piece measuring 5 1/2 inches by 11 inches, a piece measuring 3 inches by 3 inches, and another strip that measures 1/4 inch by 6 inches. For the silver foil paper, you're going to need a piece cut at 5 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch, a piece cut at 5 3/4 inch by 1 3/4 inch, and then a piece cut at 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. I also am going to need a couple of pieces of scrap that I'm going to use to cut out the front circle and stamp the word smile for the camera. And then the other piece that I have here is also scrap, color of your choice, and that's just going to be used to cut out a little tag that's going to go in behind the sentiment on the front of the camera. You need white cardstock, and pieces of white cardstock each measure 3 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. So I'm using the stitch circle dies, all 4 of them that come in the set. You can use a different circle die if you like. I'm using this label from the Tasteful Labels dies, and you can use another one of your choice. This is just for accent. I've chosen to use the braided linen trim. Again, you can use your own ribbon. I need a plastic grocery bag, and I've got the envelope punch board. I'm just going to review with you now the pieces of cardstock that you've cut and how they're going to be used to build the card. So you're going to have the moving mechanism portion, which is the slider portion. And for that part, you're going to need the largest piece of cardstock that you cut, which was cut at 5 1/2 by 11, and then the 2 pieces of white cardstock. You're also going to need the plastic grocery bag for that mechanism portion. For the camera, the front of the camera is going to be made using the piece of cardstock that you cut for your base here. The silver foil larger strip will go at the top of the camera, the smaller strip will go at the bottom. You're going to need the very thin strip of the base color to accent the camera. And then these pieces are going to be used to cut out the lens of the camera. So just to review, these are the 4 pieces that I have in the die cut set. The largest piece is going to get placed on the silver foil to cut it out. Then the second largest piece is going to get placed on the piece of blue cardstock that I have here to cut that portion out. Then to reduce wastage, I'm going to be taking this die and it's going to get placed here. Of course, they'll be flipped over so they can cut, but I just want to reduce wastage of this foil paper. And then the smallest of the 4 dies will be used to cut out the white, and that's where my sentiment will go. I'm going to begin by assembling the front portion of the camera card. So for that, I'll need the piece of cardstock that we cut at 5 3/4 by 4 1/2, and I'm going to place that piece in the envelope punch board. I'm going to slide it over so that this side, the left side, is lining up with 1 5/8 inches. When I get it lined up at 1 5/8 inches, I'm going to punch. I'm then going to flip my paper over and line it up again at 1 5/8 and punch. That's going to make this portion of the camera, and I'm going to trim away using my scissors this portion here and this portion here. I'm going to need to also take my wider strip of silver foil, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to line it up at 1 5/8 of an inch with the left side here, and I'm going to punch. I'm then going to flip the paper over, and I'm going to line it up again at 1 5/8 and punch. And then I'm going to need to trim along here and along here with my scissors. Once I've done that trimming, then I'm going to attach this to the front of the card. I also have this thinner piece of silver foil, which I'm going to go ahead and attach to the bottom. You can see now that I've used my snips and trimmed away this portion and this portion on the front of the card. I typically do that just by eyeballing it. If, however, you want to make sure that everything is perfectly aligned, then you can use your ruler, like I'm showing you here, and line it up so that it comes to the bottom edge of this cut portion, and then make a line on either side, like that. Then you will have a line to go by for cutting. I've gone ahead and taken the piece of cardstock that we originally had cut at 1/4 inch by 6 inches, and I cut it into a 4 1/2 inch portion and a 1 1/2 inch portion. These will be used to decorate the front of the card. The 2 pieces of foil are now ready to go. They're all trimmed, and I'm going to be lining them up like so on the front of the card. I recommend not using liquid glue on the foil because you will see the liquid glue underneath the foil paper. I'm going to go ahead and use snail to attach this portion and this portion, and then I'll use liquid glue to attach this portion and this smaller piece of blue, and they'll get lined up something like this. I've cut out all of the pieces that are going to form the lens of the camera, and I've placed dimensionals on the back of these pieces. They're going to get layered onto the center front. I attached this tag using a couple of glue dots, and that too has dimensional on the back. So I'm going to set these aside because I want to assemble the slider portion of the card first, and then I'll be attaching all of these pieces to the front. I've got my piece of grocery bag. I'm now going to get ready to cut the strip. So I'm just going to fold this piece like so. I'll fold it again, just so it's easier to manage. I'm going to cut off this ragged edge at the bottom. And then I'm going to cut a strip that's about 1.5 inches wide. An inch to 1.5 inches will work. So now I have a strip of the grocery bag like this, and this is going to be used for the slider portion. To assemble the mechanism for the slider, I'm taking the larger piece of cardstock, which was cut at 5 1/2 by 11 inches. I'm placing the 11-inch side at the top of the trimmer. I'm now going to score at 3 1/2. So lining it up at 3 1/2 and score. I'll line it up at 7 1/8. And then 10 5/8. So I've got 3 score lines which I'm now going to fold and burnish. On this small edge here, I'm going to attach tear and tape. With the tear and tape portion on here, I'm going to take the plastic piece of grocery bag that we cut and I'm going to wrap it around the opposite end. So you see here, I've got it wrapped around like so. I need to tape these pieces together and I want to tape them nicely so that they're not too tight and don't bend the paper, and I'll trim off this portion that I'm not going to use. I'm just going to have a very small overlap. With the tear and tape portion on here, I'm going to take the plastic piece of grocery bag that we cut and I'm going to wrap it around the opposite end. So you see here, I've got it wrapped around like so. I need to tape these pieces together and I want to tape them nicely so that they're not too tight and don't bend the paper, and I'll trim off this portion that I'm not going to use. I'm just going to have a very small overlap. So with the tear and tape here, I'm now going to flip the cardstock over and I'm going to place a piece of tear and tape up here at the top. Note that the tear and tape is only getting attached to the plastic bag and not to the cardstock. Now we're going to attach these 2 pieces of white cardstock to the tear and tape that we have placed on the grocery bag. So I'm going to remove the tear and tape backing and I'm going to attach the 1 piece of white cardstock here, like so, right over top of that tear and tape, and press. I'm going to turn over the cardstock and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to remove the backing of the tear and tape and I'm going to take my other piece of white cardstock and line it up so that it's attached to the tear and tape. Now just to show you how this is going to work, it's going to be working like so. All of this will go together and then you'll be able to pull out the pages and push them in. Now I'm going to go ahead and do my sentiment for this card on here and here. You'll see that you won't be able to have your sentiment come over into this portion because this portion will always be in behind the card. So I'm going to be careful to make sure that I'm only stamping the sentiment in the sections that I'm going to be able to see. Now we still have the tear and tape here. I've got the white cardstock now stamped with a sentiment and a little decoration. And under here, I've got the other one done as well. I'll show you that in a moment. But right now I want to look at this little 1/2 inch circle punch. You'll see here that I've made a tiny hole punch. I've attached the linen thread, did a loop, trimmed it off nicely, and now you can move this open and closed. quite easily. Now I need to attach this to the front of the camera. To prepare the sliding portion to attach to the camera, I've gone ahead and put some tear and tape on here. I want this to be adhered nicely to the front. Now here's the front of the camera. I'm going to be removing the backing of the tear and tape. I'm going to place it onto the camera like so, and then once that's attached, then you'll be able to open and close this portion. Then I'm going to go ahead and attach the lens. I'll speed this portion up for you. You can see now that the sliding mechanism has been attached to the camera portion, and when you hold the camera like so, you can pull on the ribbon and out comes the sentiments. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the lens portion. Here's the finished card. It opens like so and closes. I hope you liked the video. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time.